Hello, everyone. What's going on? This is the Noah Gillian Show, and I, of course, am your host, Noah Gillian. So happy you decided to join in today. Joining me on the show today is longtime contributor Connor Laverty. What's going on, man? Welcome back to the MLB preview.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's third year now, year three.
Year three. How about it, dude?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. We love some MLB here, and excited for the Phils moving forward. R.I.P. to Reese. Let's just start it off. Say some prayers. Let's get hot for him. That's all I gotta say. Let's do it for Reese.
Oh, yeah.
Bryce looks like he's going to be back pretty soon. I know this isn't the Phillies pod. We'll get to that, but it looks like he's going to be back sooner rather than later. I think we're going to do it for Reese. I'm ready.
I love it. Postseason for Reese. I love that. But yeah, we'll get into the Phillies a little bit later in the week. We're going to start in the American League. We're going to break it into divisions this year. So we'll be doing our divisional preview starting today in the American League East, and more specifically, starting the American League more specifically in the American League East. Before we get into the show, though, please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, please drop a 5-star review. It really help the podcast grow. Always feel free to shoot us a message on any social media platforms. You can find myself and Connor's handles in the description below. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, Con. So we're going to start off in the AL East, like I mentioned, and we're going to start off with the Toronto Blue Jays. We're just going to go in alphabetical order by nickname for the team. So we'll start off, obviously, with the Blue Jays. Finished second in the American League East last year, and had a collapse in the wild card round against the Seattle Mariners. And totally kind of blew that series against them. But they're looking to bounce back big time this year. They got a couple bats they added to the lineup, a big money pitcher they added to the lineup. So let's just start off with the lineup. Let me just ask you a simple question. Is this the best lineup in the American League East? Wow.
I mean, it's close because this is one of the best divisions in baseball, in my opinion.
Yep.
And the Yankees are definitely a great lineup. I personally like the Blue Jays lineup a little bit better. I think the firepower here from pretty much top to bottom. Looking at the lineup right now, they have Kevin Kiermaier projected 9th, who, with the exception of him, who's kind of been a below average hitter, but obviously an elite defender in the field. Good for them to get out or go out and get a center fielder like that. 1 through 8, I mean, you can't really pitch around any of them. George Springer, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero, obviously a guy who they're hoping to be there for the next decade. They go out and sign Brandon Belt, who's a good lefty power bat, who they kind of needed because they were a little righty heavy last year. So that's a good sign for them. And then they also acquired Dalton Varsho, a young guy, versatile guy. You can put him behind the plate if you really needed to.
Another lefty.
Looks like he's going to play outfield, and like you said, another lefty. So, and then you come back with Matt Chapman, who another great glove guy, power bat. You know, he's going to strike out a good amount, but he can hit the ball hard. And then they signed Whit Merrifield as well, who had a down year last year, but he could bounce back. I mean, you know, he's not going to give you all the steals like he used to be stealing 50 bags, but he's a good contact hitter in that lineup. I think it is the best lineup in the American League.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you talk about just like you got, like you mentioned, pretty much everything, like between star power, consistency, ability to hit. I think they pretty much have it all there. I did want to talk about the pitching rotation, honestly, with these guys. They don't really have, at least in my opinion, like maybe like a top 5, 6, 7, maybe even like a top 10 arm when you just talk about starting pitchers. But they go pretty deep. I mean, with the exception of their 5th guy, UC Kikuchi, who is still good in his own right, obviously gets a lot of strikeouts, has been dealing with, home runs and giving up a lot of damage when he's on the bump, still strikes out a lot of guys. But you're talking about projections here, have 4 guys for projected more than 176 innings. Like, if you're talking about getting that kind of production in terms of just ability, obviously projections are projections, but not a lot of teams have that. You talk about a guy in Alek Manoah, who's more than likely going to be their ace, a guy in Kevin Gausman, who won a Cy Young Award, I believe, a couple years ago. Maybe regardless, been ever since he went to San Francisco, kind of revitalized his career, has been a beast. Chris Bassett, their big signing from the offseason. They got him from the New York Mets. He was a guy who had a great year last year for the Mets. He's projected over 180 innings, a 3.8 ERA, so really good depth in that lineup. And then in their rotation, and then their fourth guy, Jose Barrios, another guy who, struggles with consistency in terms of his ERA, but still a guy that's projected for 170 innings, over, about 160 strikeouts. So I think that is a key piece. And obviously health plays a big, big role in that. But I think that just depth in terms of their starting rotation, along with what you mentioned with the lineup, is going to set this team up for success. And we'll talk about some other teams in the division as we kind of move on, but you could really, really make the case that they should be the favorites heading into this year. What's your take on that?
Here's what I'll say to that. Vegas has
give me the lines
the
here.
Toronto Blue Jays 91.5 wins.
Okay.
And it has
last year they had 92, so great line.
And it has the New York Yankees at 93.5.
Okay. So
they think the New York Yankees
are
going to win the division, but yes, in a close one.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think that's really, really good. They obviously have a little bit of depth on their bench too. We could touch on a couple names. Obviously, Danny Jansen was a catcher. They have a couple good options there with him and Alejandro Kirk, Kevin Biggio, Santiago Espinal, just some nice depth guys that can play all over. And yeah, their bullpen. Let's not forget about Jordan Romano. Did great last year, projected for 32 saves this year. Has really stepped into that role, and they just have a number of guys who were pretty good last year for them. So you talk about all those different things. Now they're not going to have Hyun-Jin Ryu, who had Tommy John surgery last June, and he was a big free agent signing from the Dodgers in 2019. So they do have some injuries. They're dealing with Chad Green, a reliever they picked up from the Yankees, dealing with Tommy John as well. So I think they can definitely contend for this AL East crown, and if not, they will be in the picture with the wild card race. So let's move on here, Con. Unless you have anything else you want to talk about. All right, cool. Let's go to the next team on our list, the Orioles. We don't have to go in depth too much because we did talk about them a lot on the prospects episode. If you guys missed that, it was the last episode we posted, was our MLB preview prospects episode. And one of the main reasons, or one of the main things we talked about on that episode was the Baltimore Orioles, because they have so many great young players. We already talked about a bunch of them, but just to name a few: Adley Rutschman, one of the best catchers in the league already at 25 years old. Gunnar Henderson, a consensus top 2 prospect in all of the big leagues, going to be their third baseman. And then a guy who played for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, Cedric Mullins, is going to be setting the table for them at the top of the lineup. So I guess with the lineup, we kind of talked about that a lot in the prospects. Maybe if you want to talk on the pitching or just in general, what's their outlook for this year, Con, for the Orioles?
Yeah, the pitching's going to be interesting.
Kyle Gibson, opening day starter.
I can't believe it. They have him, and they have Cole Irvin, two former Phillies in the rotation to start the year. Obviously, all eyes are going to be on Grayson Rodriguez, who's going to start as the 5th starter, former top pitching prospect before Andrew Painter arguably dethroned him. But but he's up now, and he looked good this spring, man. There's a lot of potential there. He could be a frontline starter if it all clicks. Another guy I'm looking at is Kyle Bradish. I know a lot of fantasy guys kind of like him as an under-the-radar guy. His numbers were not quite as bad as they seemed last year. And he's been working on some new pitches this spring from what I've been reading. So we'll see if he can kind of settle into a middle of the rotation pitcher for them, because that would be big. I'm not really confident in the top 3 guys, so that's kind of the issue. I do want to give a little shout out to Adley Rutschman, though. I know we kind of touched on the bats. He's just, I mean, obviously we have JT Realmuto. He's a stud. Will Smith for the Dodgers. They're probably the top 2 catchers in baseball. But I think Adley's going to be the best catcher in baseball sooner rather than later.
I think there's going to be a realistic conversation at the end of this year. And I know
I
we love
agree.
JT, but
I agree.
I think it's realistic.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about a guy who, number one, can do it in the field. Like JT is obviously a great fielder. So is Adley. Adley is a great fielder. And then at the plate, a catcher who he's got an 88th percentile whiff rate, right? So he's not swinging and missing much at all. And then he's 82nd percentile in chase rate. So he's not swinging out of the zone either. So you got a guy at the catcher position who has that kind of eye. And then on top of that, he's got 20 plus home run power potential. I mean, that's definitely lining up to be the best catcher in baseball. So I'm really excited to see what Adley Rutschman does this year.
Yeah, he just brings everything to the table. Switch hitter. I don't know if you mentioned that too. Switch hitter, and it's just going to be the face of that franchise for maybe a decade, depending on how his body holds up behind the plate if they move him off. But yeah, a team that went 83-79 last year, surprised a lot of people. Were in it in the wild card race even into mid-September. So I don't know if you have their total for this year. That
brings me to my first best bet of the show.
Okay. Woo.
What did you say? Orioles had how many wins last year?
83 last year.
And they're projecting them at 76.5.
Whoa. Okay. So we got a best. Oh.
Now here's my qualm. Okay. Those first three pitchers in the rotation scare me a little. Kyle Bradish, like I said, he could be solid, but he's nothing to write home about. And G-Rod, they may have an innings limit on him.
Yeah, so, yeah, for sure.
I could definitely see less than 83 wins, especially considering how competitive the division is. But I still think I like over 76.5. I still think they get 78, 77. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the continuity of their lineup, along with hopefully steps for Baltimore, hopefully steps from Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, and then, like you said, hopefully their Grayson Rodriguez addition to the rotation kind of takes the weight off of everybody else. And Gibson's fine. Obviously he's not a number one, but he fine. Eats innings. Yeah. So I think that's what they're looking for there. And then quick shout out, Felix Bautista. They have as a closer for them, is arguably one of the best closers in the game, has one of the nastiest splitters in all of baseball. So you talk about a team that, obviously 76.5 is their win total, but when they're up late in these games, with Bautista on the bump, they're going to be as good as, anybody in the league at closing those games down. Great defensive team as well. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good bet. 76.5. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I love that. So let's move on as we move through the rest of the AL East. And that brings us to the Tampa Bay Rays. They went 86-76 last year. They made the playoffs in the wild card in the American League, and bringing back a lot of players for them, which is interesting for Tampa Bay. Usually a team that has a lot of turnover. Outside of, they have pretty much one big move between their rotation, their bench, and their lineup, who wasn't on their team last year, and that is former Philly Zach Eflin. Eflin, in addition to Shane McClanahan, Jeffrey Springs, and Drew Rasmussen, it's a pretty formidable top four in terms of starting rotation. We'll see if McClanahan can hold up for an entire year. He kind of struggled down the stretch with his shoulder, but I don't know. I see the Rays as just doing Rays things, and they're going to be around come, beginning of October, end of September. What say you on the Rays here?
Yeah, I mean, I always like the Rays. This is the third year we've been doing the show. Every year I talk about how much I like the Rays. Yep. I agree. I think those top four in the pitching rotation, Eflin obviously has not proven to stay healthy, so that's the number one thing for them. But if those four are all healthy, that's a good top four. And especially when you think about how much the Rays get out of their pitching, no matter who they have on the bump, seems like they're always getting the most out of them. So I like those four a lot. Really, really like Shane McClanahan this year. Moving to the lineup, one guy I love is Yandy Diaz, projected to kind of hit lead off for them this year. He's so under the radar, man. He just hits the ball. He doesn't swing outside the zone. Actually, third in the American League last year with a 401 OBP. So I really, really like Yandy. Another guy I'm excited to see is Wander Franco.
Oh
I know
yeah.
he was the number one prospect in baseball. Guys were comparing him. I know there were some pretty lofty comparisons to him when he was coming up, and he didn't light the world on fire last year. But there's some things to like. I mean, he's 85th percentile on max exit velocity, and he's also 96th percentile on expected batting average. So I would think his numbers are going to jump up a little this year. I don't think he's ever going to be a 30 home run guy, but I think he's very capable of 320 home runs. So I'm excited to see Wander Franco this year. Yeah, I like the Rays a lot. I think they're always just going to be competitive for until
Yeah, I mean they're gonna ray their way
Yep.
to being a thing. One guy who I think is super important for this team is Brandon Lau. And I wanted to touch on him because in 2020 obviously was a shortened year. He had a monster year. He was top 10% in expected slugging percentage, expected weighted on base average. Like he was really doing his thing. And when you look at some of the numbers, like his average exit velocity hasn't really changed since that year. His max EV has actually gone up, a tick over the last year. His launch angle's been average, but his barrel percentage has gone down. So I just wonder what is kind of what is kind of changing with his thing, because when he's right, I mean, they have him projected to hit cleanup in this lineup, and he's going to be moving all over the place. Not just going to be a second baseman, could play some outfield as well. But I think he is going to be like really important for them. They have him projected to lead the team in home runs at 27. So I think that is really going to extend the lineup. And if he doesn't, I think the lineup is going to be what kind of holds this team back from returning to the World Series, where they were in 2020, when they went up against the Los Angeles Dodgers and obviously lost in 6 games. I believe it was 6 games. But I think that's going to kind of be the fulcrum for this lineup, because we all saw what Randy Arozarena did in the World Baseball Classic. When it's playoff time, Randy's going to be ready to go. And obviously,
he's the definition of a big game player.
Yep. Exactly. And Wander, you touched on him. We expect him to do really well. So my guy I'm really looking at this year is Brandon Lau. And as he goes, I expect the Rays to go. So I think that's an important player for them. But other than that, their bullpen, you're never going to know who these guys' names are, but they're always going to be nasty coming out. Their closers are more than likely going to be Pete Fairbanks and Jason Adam. Those guys have been with the team, or Jason Adams only been there for a year. But Pete Fairbanks has been there, and a couple other guys have been there as well. 2 names also I wanted to mention as we kind of wrap up the Rays here: Shane Baz and Tyler Glasnow. Now, Shane Baz is one of their top pitching prospects, got Tommy John surgery at the end of last year. So you're more than likely not going to see him for a majority there. You may see him late in the year. So I think that is a name to just kind of keep a pin in. But Tyler Glasnow is arguably, when healthy, their best pitcher on the team. Him and McClanahan, obviously McClanahan a little bit younger, might have the higher ceiling, but Tyler Glasnow strained his oblique at the end of February this year. So we'll see how his injury progresses a little bit. But if they can get him back, if he can, I mean, he hasn't even pitched. I think you said this, maybe our last show, or one of the times we're talking about it. He hasn't pitched over 100 innings in his career. So like, I think getting him healthy, getting him on a routine of consistency is crucial for them, and I think that's going to determine their success as well. And and then what's the win total there as we kind of wrap this up?
This one's so tough. It's 88.5, so they're projecting them third behind the Yankees, and
more wins than last year.
Yeah, it's like, I kind of agree with you. I'm looking at the lineup, and
it's not, I mean,
they always get the most out of their guys. Like Harold Ramirez had a solid year last year. He's going to be good for them. Manuel Margot, he's
okay.
He's good in the field. He's got some speed. I mean,
a lot of people like Isaac Paredes, but like,
he's kind of in that same boat with Harold Ramirez with me. Not flashy, but they're going to put him in positions to succeed.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I agree. How much run they're going to need their pitching to be like.
I like the under. I
Yeah,
like the
I
under
can't
80.
bet the under. I can't bring myself to,
I like
but
the under. I think I'm
I'm
taking
worried
that.
about it. Yeah, yeah. I don't
I'm gonna
know.
put that on my list. Best bet under 88 and a half.
All right, all right.
Tampa Bay. All right. So as we kind of wrap up the Rays, let's move to a team that had one of the craziest off seasons. Call it however you want, good or bad. The Boston Red Sox. This is a team that went 78 and 84 last year, and really had no chance at the playoffs at all last year. I just don't really remember seeing them anywhere close. But they did re-sign Rafael Devers. They're pretty much franchise face along with one other guy who they lost. They go out and they spend a ton of money on Japanese import Masataka Yoshida, who had a great year in the, had a great World Baseball Classic. If anybody was watching that as well. And they went out and they signed Justin Turner. They signed Adam Duvall. So they got a couple guys. They promoted top prospect or number 2 prospect Tristan Casas. He'll be batting every day now for them at first base. But they lost Xander Bogaerts, arguably the best player on their team, face of the franchise. You know, him and Rafael Devers, call it what you will, but arguably their best player, and they refused to shell out the money for Xander Bogaerts. Did you take that as, I don't want to say like almost like a rebuilding move, because then they go out and they spend $100 million on Yoshida, but what did you make of that?
I'm glad I'm not a Red Sox fan. I don't know. I mean, I understand Bogarts isn't as young as Devers. They wanted to pay Devers, but like, yeah, I mean, I thought, yeah. And then it doesn't, like you said, it just doesn't really make sense. They go out and spend a ton of money on Yoshida, who's a nice player. I like him. He's also going to be 30 this year. So,
Right.
like, it's not like he's young. They signed Corey Kluber, who, again, a nice sign. He's fine. He's solid. He's going to be okay when he pitches, but he's 37. And it's like, what's their game plan right here? Like, I'm not really sure. You touched on it. Obviously, I love Devers. He's a stud. I like Tristan Casas a lot. Really excited to see what he does. And they have some other solid bats. I mean, Alex Verdugo, you know what you're going to get from him. They're projecting him for just under a 300 average this year. Justin Turner, they got from the Dodgers, another older guy. It's like they kind of stockpiled these guys who are like getting older and like on their last leg.
Right.
I don't really know what to expect from them. I don't. And then another one, Kenley Jansen, to be their closer, who he's a good pitcher, he's a good player,
but he just got hurt. You know,
I saw he's all right.
Okay.
He was he left the game for lightheadedness apparently. He said he thinks he was just dehydrated. I know that he's on my dynasty categories. I have
you're like, no, dude, he's good.
Saves, holds are a huge category, and Edwin Diaz done for the year I have. And then I thought Kenley was about to be hurt too. I was going to be done. But he looks to be okay.
Okay, well, let's talk about, I think, probably the biggest swing player on the team, Chris Sale. Another guy who I believe you have on your dynasty team as well. This is a guy who in 2017, 2018, 2019 was top 2% in strikeout percentage. The league average is 22.1, and he was pushing 38, 35% strikeout percentage. His expected ERA was in the top 6, top 2% of the league in that time. Then injuries kind of took over, and he's really struggled to stay healthy, but now it appears he's getting back to it. He's starting to get healthy. They're building up this rotation a little bit with him and Corey Kluber at the top. I mean, if this was 2018, this would be a top rotation in the league. But talk about Chris Sale. Let's have realistic expectations. They're projecting for 140 innings pitched. Give me the over-under on that. What do you think about Chris Sale this year?
I mean, I may be a little biased, like you said, because he's on my fantasy team, but I feel like the injuries he's had were like freak injuries. Like, as long as he can stay healthy, I think there's no reason he couldn't pitch 140 innings. I guess that's a big if. But I think, I mean, he's looked good, like you said. He did get shelled one of his outings this spring, but other than that, he's looked pretty good. I mean, if he's going to pitch that many innings, I'd bank on at least a sub 4 ERA. Could be even lower if he starts to get hot again. Yeah, he definitely has that ace potential still. And like, He's 34. Like
He's
some
up
of these
there, dude.
guys, like we just saw Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander pitching at just sub-3 ERAs last
True.
year.
Yep.
Chris Sale's 34. Like if he can bounce back from these injuries, there's no reason he couldn't pitch another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he's going to be a big difference maker for that team, because other than him, you're talking about, like I said, Corey Kluber, who they just signed, and then you're talking about a guy in Tanner Houck, who's pretty much unproven, former first round pick. Talking about a guy in Cutter Crawford, who is kind of just like kind of whatever, and then a guy who's projected for the most innings pitched on the team, former Philly Nick Pivetta. So I think
Now,
that is an issue for
it is. I agree. There's James Paxton, who hasn't pitched in 2 years, I think is gonna hopefully break into the rotation early in the season.
Yeah, he's coming off. He hurt his hammy on the 3rd of this month, so
yeah.
we're hoping he comes back healthy. Obviously, also Garrett Whitlock. He's already I think he's going to miss 2 turns in the rotation, and then he'll be back ready to go. So he probably honestly is going to slot high in their rotation as well. And then young guy Brian Bayo. They say he's got forearm tightness in February. We don't love that, but those guys would definitely help as well. Also, Trevor Story, their big money signing a couple years ago, has elbow surgery. I'm pretty sure he's out for the year. So
I can get a fact check.
Yeah, give me a quick fact check. But Trevor Story is more than likely is going to be out for the year, and then we'll see what kind of happens there. But this team is going to have to bash their way to wins here. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them. And who knows if Tristan Casas takes a step. That's great. We'll see what happens with more of their bench, but you can
looks like Story is going to try to return in 2023. I guess that could kind of depend if they're competitive.
If
or
he
not.
says he's going to try to return this year, I don't have high hopes.
He could.
It
says Story thinks he'll return in 2023.
He definitely could. I don't know what kind of impact he'll provide when he comes back, but
they also got a sign what do you know, he's already landed on the injured list, Adalberto Mondesi from the Kansas City Royals, who
I was going to say
all the tools in the world, but
yes, this is also a team that lost a ton. We were talking about some of this right before the show, some of these teams that lost so many free agents. I mean, let me just list off some of these guys. You talk about Xander Bogaerts, obviously. Rich Hill was a big part of the rotation. Michael Wacha was a big part of the rotation. JD Martinez has been a stud for them for years. Nathan Eovaldi is in Texas now, was a big part of their rotation. Matt Strahm in Philly now was a big reliever for them. Hosmer, Tommy Pham. That's a lot of guys that they've replaced. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of develops this year. But here we go again. Let's start with the over under. What do we got here, Con?
We have 78.5.
Dude, I literally I don't know. I think the O's could be better than the Red Sox, but on paper right now, it makes sense why they have a higher over under, or they're the same.
Two more. Orioles are 76.5.
I almost want to take the O's over. Like the Red Sox legit might be the worst team in the division, which is crazy, but I think they might be. They were last year, right? It's between those two teams, I think.
Those guys, like I was talking about how old all those signees were, but they're like solid guys.
That's what's bringing me back. Like Justin Turner, solid. Yoshida showed up. Duvall, okay.
Power,
yeah.
And then they get Sale back. I don't know. They signed Kenley Jansen to close games.
Yeah.
I think I'm taking the over. I think the Rays are going to go under. I'm not going to bet it, but I think the Rays are going to go under. And I think the Orioles and Red Sox are going to go over. I think 3, 4, 5 are going to be.
Okay.
I think that whole division is going to be a log jam.
Yeah. I think, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting. It's a great line for me. The only one I really like so far that we've talked about is the under on the Rays. The O's over. I like that as well. But the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, I think, are more stayaways for me as we go on here. I think that about wraps it up talking about the Red Sox. Not much more we want to get into here. So let's talk about the defending AL East champions, the New York Yankees. A lot of obviously we got to start with the big fella. Aaron Judge had arguably the greatest season of any player in the history of the big leagues last year. 62 home runs, almost won the Triple Crown, like ridiculous amounts of stats. This lineup is absolutely loaded, but let's talk about the rotation. Let's call it what it is. They got guys all up and down this injured list. Frankie Montas, Carlos Rodon is hurt, Luis Severino. Can this lineup overcome that?
They're going to have to hit a lot. I think it's definitely going to be a struggle for them early on. Obviously, you got Cole at the top, but it falls off real quick after that. I mean, Nestor Cortez is there. He was battling some injuries, I think. So I think he was slow to ramp up this spring. Probably going to be building him up in April. But I like him and Cole. Outside of that, Clark Schmidt, I know some fantasy guys like him. Until I see him do it, I don't think you can really rely on him. Johnny Brito, 25-year-old, technically still a prospect for them. He's pitched well this spring. Another guy who doesn't have much, if any, big league experience. And then Domingo Herman. I don't know.
He's just whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
just,
exactly. So I agree. The bats are going to have to carry them. Are they capable? Yes, they are. I mean, you look at the lineup, Judge hit 60, like you said. Giancarlo's got all the power in the world. Gleyber Torres bounced back a little bit.
They brought Rizzo back.
Rizzo, who's battled some back injuries. They need him to stay healthy. Big one, Anthony Volpe.
Just going to say the big news of the day.
Yep.
We got lucky with that one.
Top prospect. Just got informed he's going to make the opening day roster. He's a stud. We talked about him a little bit in the prospect pod, I believe.
Yes, we did.
A guy who I said stole 50 bags in the minor leagues last year.
Yeah, they're already projecting him for 22 bags this year.
He's a beast.
15 and 22. It's not bad.
He can really hit the ball. He had a solid spring. Yeah, I think the lineup is really good, but they're going to have to score early on because that pitching is not great.
They're going to have to. They got good relievers, Clay Holm, Jonathan Loizaga, Michael King. All three of those guys are pretty good options to go to in for their team. Tommy Canley, they signed from the Dodgers in the offseason. We'll see when he comes back. He's dealing with biceps tendonitis. But obviously their other big money signing Carlos Rodon. He should be back pretty early in April. We'll see exactly when in April, but they're confident he'll be back. If he can come back and stay healthy, I think they'll be fine. I still would take them to win the division. I'm not banking on Judge to hit 60 again, but it's what's stopping him from hitting 47 like this year? You know what I mean? Like he could have like a Schwarber year with those dingers where he hit 46, 47, 48. Drive in a ton of runs. The only thing is he hits second. So that always blows my mind about Aaron, like why they do that. But I wonder who's going to be leading off for them. They got DJ LeMahieu leading off. You know, I guess he's good he's a good average guy. He's a good on base guy in terms of that. Slaps the ball the opposite way. But I agree with you. I think the lineup is more than capable. 1 through 6 all have pop. Aaron Hicks is whatever. Jose Trevino is a phenomenal defender. And then Anthony Volpe, if he can turn into a stud, if he ends up leading off for this team, if he can get his average and on base up to a certain standard, then it gets scary. But overall, I think this team is set to repeat in this division and to really go. Let's talk about their win total as we wrap this up and see. They won 99 games last year. Let's just, before you say that, they were tearing it up before the All-Star break and then kind of stumbled into the playoffs, ended up getting knocked out. So where are they at?
93.5. They don't like the pitching.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, it makes sense. I don't love it either.
I'm even going to contend with you. I'm going to take the Blue Jays to win the division.
I just
think
feel
the
like
just as good.
Okay.
Obviously, they don't have an Aaron Judge. Maybe not just as good, but a hair underneath if it's not. And their pitching is better.
Right. So let's talk about this real quick.
I'd
I
take
said
Kevin Gausman is like almost as good as Garrett Cole. He
that
is.
I don't think so,
He
but
is.
I don't.
You,
Yeah.
I mean, last year, Garrett Cole had a 3.5 ERA. Kevin Gausman had a 3.35. Their xERA was right around the same. They both had a 3.3 xERA. Kevin Gausman's FIP 2.38, which was top 5 lowest in the entire league, whereas Garrett Cole's FIP 3.47. Obviously, those aren't the end all be all of everything, but like Cole's regressed a little bit.
He has, but he's also been really consistent. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be as good as he was in that last year in Houston, but he's been so consistent for the Yankees and just have been a stalwart for them. I mean, they're projecting for 200 innings, 250 Ks. Like, that's him in a nutshell. He does have a home run problem. He always has. But I do, and obviously Gausman has the splitter. Like, he gets a lot of ground balls, so that could also be maybe that
doesn't walk as many guys.
No, it's fair.
Almost strikes out as many, like just under.
Yeah, I mean it's a hot take, but you know you got the numbers to back it up. So I mean, you know,
and then my point being though, I like the rest of the Blue Jays rotation, especially right now with all the injuries to the Yankees rotations.
So. Right, and that was going to be the point I kind of made. I said 4 guys of the Blue Jays were projected for more than 170 innings. If you include Carlos Rodon, who probably won't touch that, you have 2 guys so far, 199 and Garrett Cole at 169 and Nestor Cortez. I don't think Rodon gets there. And then they don't even have another guy over 140. So you're talking about the consistency, the depth of the Blue Jays rotation, I think. And the lineups are right there neck and neck. So let's do it, dude. I like the Blue Jays to win the AL East, and we'll see what happens.
I'm going to check the odds on that. That's going to be my second. So those are my 2 best bets, over Orioles and Blue Jays to win the AL East.
We'll make sure we put all these together, and we'll have our ticket for the year. You know, we'll be rounding back at the end of the year to make sure if we won any money or not.
Plus 205
for the Yankees
Blue Jays. Yankees are the favorite at plus 125. Blue Jays plus 205.
Yeah, I like the I like it, dude. I like the Blue Jays to win the division. My best bet's under Rays wins, Blue Jays to win the division.
Let's go. Talk them into it.
So that's what I'm thinking. But other than that, yeah, what else you got? You got something else?
I was gonna say, give me one breakout hitter or pitcher in this American League East. Any team, young guy, can be an old guy, who's gonna have a good season in this.
It might be a low hanging fruit, but give me Gunnar Henderson. He's just the easy one, I think.
Gunnar Henderson,
rookie. I think he's gonna win Rookie of the Year. I think that's a good ticket to put down. And yeah, I think Gunnar Henderson. What about you?
All right. I kind of talked about him already. I'm gonna go Adley Rutschman.
Okay, so with 2 Orioles.
Yeah, I'm gonna say what you said already. I think he could contend for the best catcher in baseball at the end of the season.
Okay, I like it. I think that's a good take. I was between those 2, if we're being honest. Another guy, Masataka Yoshida. I think he could just be a breakout.
Yeah, I like it too
for the Red Sox.
How about a pitcher?
Grayson Rodriguez is too easy, so I'm not going to say it. You know what? Give me Zach Eflin. I think he could honestly really step up for that team and be like a really, really solid starter for them. And obviously McClanahan probably glass now, but give me Zach Eflin. I think he's going to break out and have a healthy, good year.
I like it. I was debating whether just to ride my Kevin Gausman and just say he's going to win AL Cy Young.
Wow.
But I'm going to stick with the Rays. I'm going to say, I don't know which one I'm going to cheat. One of Jeffrey Springs or Drew Rasmussen is going to take even another step forward. They both were really good last year in kind of limited innings. I think if the Rays can let them loose, one of them is going to take an even bigger step forward this year.
Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah. I like both of them. I like both of them. Yep.
But all right, well, we're running out of time on this episode, so that's going to do it for this episode of the pod, the AL-ish preview. Once again, check the description for all our social media handles. Feel free to shoot us a message, and yeah, we'll be back doing pods all week, so definitely stay tuned, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.